She thought I was gone. I could see it in the way her shoulders loosened when the front door clicked shut, the way her weight shifted like someone finally letting go of a held breath. My husband's footsteps were already fading down the walkway, the muffled thud of his car door following like punctuation. But I didn't leave. I stood there for a moment, just inside the hallway, my hand still on the cool brass of the doorknob. From the kitchen, I heard the faint scrape of a chair leg against tile. Then silence. That kind of silence that isn't empty, but charged, like the air before a storm. Her scent reached me before I saw her. A faint trace of warm vanilla and something sharper, like citrus and salt on skin. My pulse picked up. I took one step, then another, letting the heel of my boot hit the hardwood with a slow, deliberate rhythm. When I appeared in the doorway, she was there, my neighbor, leaning against the counter in that casual, calculated way. Her fingers wrapped around a coffee mug she clearly wasn't drinking from. Her eyes widened for half a second, then softened into something that looked suspiciously like amusement. "I thought you left," she said, her voice low enough that it seemed meant for no one but me. "I almost did," I replied, leaning my shoulder against the frame. The sunlight streaming through the half-open blinds cut across her face, painting her cheek in golden shadow. I could see the faint curve of a smile tugging at her mouth. Neither of us moved closer. Not yet. But the space between us felt impossibly small, like the air was bending around the unspoken thing hanging there. I should have gone. Instead, I closed the door. I knew why she was here. She didn't even live on this side of the street, but lately she'd found excuses. Borrowing sugar. Returning a book she never actually read. Just passing by. Always when my husband was home. And always when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Except I always was. Today, though, she wasn't here for me. Not exactly. Her eyes kept flicking toward the front door, as if willing it to open again. Not for me to walk back in, but for him. My husband. It should have bothered me. Maybe it did. But there was something in watching her anticipation, in knowing I was the interruption, that made my chest feel tight in a way that wasn't entirely anger. "You're early," she said, sipping from the mug at last, though I could tell the coffee had gone cold. "And you're bold," I countered, tilting my head. "Standing here like this. Waiting." Her gaze lingered on me for a heartbeat, then slid away, like she'd decided I wasn't the game she'd come to play today. That stung more than I wanted to admit. The sun shifted through the blinds, and for a moment stripes of light and shadow lay across her throat, her collarbone, the delicate hollow at the base of her neck. My fingers curled reflexively against the door frame. I knew I should tell her to leave. I should warn her that my husband wasn't who she thought he was. But instead I stepped into the kitchen. The floor was cool under my bare feet, each step making her posture tighten just a little more. Her lips parted, maybe to protest, maybe to invite. But nothing came out. Just that silence again, the kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat, every shallow breath. "You were waiting for him," I said softly. She didn't answer. But she didn't deny it either. I closed the last few steps between us slowly, like I was testing the strength of an invisible thread. She didn't move away, but she didn't lean in either. Her fingers tightened around the mug like it was the only solid thing keeping her steady. "You've been patient," I said, my voice low, almost conversational. "I've watched you. Every glance. Every little excuse to be near him." Her chin lifted, defiant. And now you're here. Alone. With me." The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but not denial. The light shifted again, painting her in warm amber. The air felt thick, heavy with the faint aroma of her perfume and something else. Something like heat rising from her skin. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" I murmured. My hand rested on the counter beside her, close enough that the back of my fingers almost brushed the fabric of her dress. Almost. Her breath hitched just once. "Do you?" It was such a small question, but the way she said it, like she was daring me to prove it, sent a slow ripple through me. I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know exactly what you want." She was watching my mouth now, not my eyes. For a long second, neither of us moved. The world outside, the hum of cars, the distant bark of a dog, faded into nothing. There was only the faint pulse of tension between us, steady and insistent. But then I stepped back. Just enough to let her exhale. Her eyes followed me, wary and curious, like a cat trying to decide whether I just offered safety or bait. I could see it in her eyes. She thought I'd retreated, that maybe I was going to walk away, leave her with her heartbeat slowing back to normal. I didn't. Instead, I reached for the abandoned coffee pot and poured myself a cup, letting the silence stretch. The faint splash of liquid was the only sound, and it made her shift uncomfortably, like she knew something had shifted but couldn't place it. "You're waiting for a man who doesn't belong to you," I said finally, my tone almost casual. Her jaw tightened. "You think you own him?" I took a sip, the warmth seeping through me, though it wasn't the coffee making my pulse rise. "I don't think," I said. "I know, but that's not the part you should be worried about." Her brows knit together and I saw it, the flicker of doubt. "What's that supposed to mean?" I stepped closer again, this time circling around her like I was looking for the best angle to tell a secret. "He talks about you," I whispered, letting my breath brush her ear. "More than you'd guess." The mug in her hands trembled just slightly. "He notices," I went on. "Your dresses, your perfume, the way you touch his arm when you laugh." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And I let him." Her eyes snapped to mine, searching for some trace of bluff. I didn't blink. Outside, a car door slammed somewhere down the street, and for a moment her gaze darted toward the sound. But she didn't move. She was still caught between wanting to stay and knowing she should leave, and I was enjoying every second of it. I set my coffee down slowly like there was no hurry. She was still holding hers like a shield, but the way her shoulders had shifted told me it wasn't working. "You're good," I said. "The smiles, the timing, the little touches. You've been planting seeds for weeks." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she didn't. And that silence, God, that silence was better than any admission. I leaned a hip against the counter, close enough that the edge of my dress brushed her leg. I didn't pretend it was an accident. Her eyes flicked down, then up again. "You think you can scare me?" she asked. "No," I said, my voice low and steady. "I think I can show you exactly what you've been doing so you know how it feels." Her breath caught and I knew she remembered. Every time she'd leaned in too close to my husband, every laugh that lingered too long, every innocent hand on his shoulder. I was doing it now with the same precision. Only this time there was no one else in the room to interrupt. I reached past her for the sugar jar, letting my arm graze hers just enough to send that faint shiver through the air between us. She tensed but didn't step back. "You think I haven't noticed," I continued. "But I notice everything. Every glance. Every pause before you walk away." Her chest rose and fell faster now, though her expression was still somewhere between defiance and curiosity. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally, her voice quieter than before. I smiled, not wide, just enough for her to see that I had no intention of answering. Not yet. Because the truth was, the game she thought she'd been playing, I'd been playing longer. She tilted her head and for the first time I saw the smallest curve of a smile. Not playful, victorious. Like she thought I'd backed myself into a corner. "You sound jealous," she said softly, testing the words on her tongue. I didn't flinch. "Maybe," I allowed, keeping my voice even. "Or maybe I'm curious." Her brows lifted. "About what?" I took my time answering. Let the hum of the refrigerator fill the gap. Let her lean forward just slightly, drawn in without even realizing it. "About how far you'd go. If you thought no one would find out." Something flickered in her eyes. A mix of temptation and warning. "And what if I said I'm not afraid?" I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off her skin. "Then I'd tell you something," I whispered. "Something you probably won't believe." Her breath stilled, her gaze locked on mine. "He already knows," I said. Her lashes lowered for half a second. "Knows what?" I let my fingers trail the rim of my coffee mug, like I was in no rush to clarify. "About you. About the way you look at him. About us." The last word landed like a drop of ink in water, spreading fast, impossible to ignore. Her grip on her mug loosened just slightly. "Us." I smiled. "You think you've been waiting for him. But maybe—" I paused, letting the moment stretch until her pulse was practically visible in her throat. "He's been waiting for you too." She blinked and for the first time she looked unsure. And that, more than her bravado, was what I'd been waiting for. I moved before she could answer. Not fast. Just enough to erase the last inch of space between us, the air between our bodies suddenly warm, charged. Her breath caught and I could feel it, faint and uneven against my collarbone. You think you've been careful, I murmured. But every move you've made. I've been right here, watching. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't step back. And now what? You're going to scare me off? I let my hand rest lightly on the counter beside her hip, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the heat. No, I said. I'm going to see if you'll do with me what you've been imagining with him. Her breath hitched. The late afternoon light shifted again, sliding across her cheek, catching the faintest glint in her eyes. She swallowed, and I caught the subtle movement in her throat, the smallest sign of hesitation. You're married, she whispered. I leaned in until my lips were almost grazing the shell of her ear. So is he. She shivered. And then just as her hand twitched, whether to push me away or pull me closer I couldn't tell. I stepped back slowly, deliberately. See, I said with a faint smile. You're not the only one who can start something and not finish it. She stared at me, a faint flush coloring her skin, and I could almost see the questions stacking in her mind. Outside, a car turned into the driveway, tires crunching on gravel. Her head whipped toward the sound, and that's when I saw it, equal parts fear and anticipation. The sound of the car door closing seemed to echo through the kitchen. Her grip on the counter tightened, the tendons in her hand standing out pale against her skin. He's home, she whispered like she needed me to confirm it. I didn't move. I didn't even glance toward the door. You were waiting for him, I said, letting the words hang in the charged air. So why don't you stay? Her head snapped toward me. What? Before she could protest again, the front door opened. His voice carried down the hall, warm, casual, unaware. Or maybe not. Hey, he called. Her eyes darted between me and the doorway. I could see her pulse racing in her throat, see her weighing whether to run or stand her ground. I stepped past her, brushing her arm just enough to leave a ghost of heat, and moved toward the hall. Kitchen, I called back to him, my voice smooth. She didn't follow at first. But when his footsteps approached, steady and unhurried, she straightened her dress, lifted her chin and faced the doorway. He stepped in, smiling that easy smile of his, the one that made people trust him too quickly. His gaze swept over me, then her. His brow lifted, but only slightly. I didn't know we had company, he said, and there was the faintest glimmer in his eyes, something only I would notice. She was just leaving, I said, her mouth open like she might correct me. But then he smiled at her. Slowly, deliberately, and I saw her spine soften just enough for me to know. She wasn't going anywhere. I watched the way his eyes lingered on her. The way hers darted away, then back again like she couldn't help herself. It would have been easy to let them think they were the only ones tangled in this moment. That she'd been the hunter, that he'd been the prey, that I just stumbled into it. But the truth? I'd been weaving this for weeks. Every time she brushed his arm I'd seen it. And instead of warning him off I'd let her, sometimes even gave her space to do it. I'd plant him in her path, mention things about her I knew would spark his curiosity, drop little comments about her laugh, her perfume, her way of leaning in too close. And it worked. She thought she was the one making the moves. He thought he was quietly indulging a harmless crush. But neither of them realized they'd been moving on a board I'd been setting piece by piece. He stepped closer to her now, polite, easygoing, but I saw it in the way his gaze dipped, the way her breath shortened. She was already halfway into the trap and didn't even know it. I leaned against the counter, letting my fingers trail lazily along the rim of my coffee mug. Why don't you stay for dinner? I said, my voice light but edged with something neither of them could name. Her eyes flicked to me, searching for some kind of permission. It stayed on her. In that moment they both thought they were about to get what they wanted. And I smiled to myself because I knew they were about to get what I wanted instead.